Hi guys, I'm Elisa and I'm back with another video, and today I wanted to do a wrap up of 25-ish books. I haven't actually counted how many it is, let me see. But it's from book 87 to 111 books. It's 23 books total. Usually I will use at least 4 videos for this to make it so that I can actually do proper reviews of it. But since I want to actually have all of my books wrapped up by the end of this year and not have more videos coming in January, I decided to do one big one. Hopefully it's not going to be too long. I'm going to be talking sort of briefly about every book that I read and my ratings and whatnot, and hopefully you'll still get a sense of my thoughts about them. The 87th book that I read this year was Marotta by L.L. McNeill. This is the first book in her series, her debut novel. It's called The World of Linara, and her second book is coming out the beginning of this year, no, next year, I think. I think that's what she told me. I have a full review of this book up on my channel, so I'll leave that in the card symbol up here so you can check it out, because it's worth it to check it out at least. And I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was a really promising start to a new series. Then I read Weird Sisters by Terry Pratchett. This is the 6th book in the Discworld series, but it's the 2nd book that is about the witches. So we're back to following Granny Weatherwax and her sisters. And she's sort of meddling in politics, royal politics, and sort of Terry Pratchett sort of takes on different Shakespearean plays where he has these his inspiration for this book, and that made it was a lot of fun. I haven't read all of Shakespeare's plays, definitely not. I know some of them, but I could still see the references from different plays, and that was a lot of fun. And I gave it 4.25 stars. It's not completely up there with Equal Rights and Maud for me, but I still really enjoyed it. The next thing that I read this year was Burn For Me by Ilona Andrews. This is a wife and husband author team, and they're always writing more or less urban fantasy, but it could have a science fiction sort of twist as well. Burn For Me is the first book in the Hidden Legacy series, which is currently 3 books. I think it's a trilogy, I'm not sure. I haven't heard if there's going to be more books in the series, but currently there are 3 books out. It's in a world where people have these sort of psychic abilities like telekinesis and stuff like that, and the main character, she's able to sense if you lie or not, so she can sense that in people. And then there's the main antagonist. He's able to create fire with a willpower of his mind, just like that. So he's sort of the one that's trying to catch. And then there are more characters who has other abilities and stuff. But it was really interesting book. It's it's urban fantasy, so if you like urban fantasy, I think you'll enjoy it. If you don't, I'm not sure. It's quite also a little heavy on the romance part. But I also will say that I didn't feel like it was too romance heavy until like the last third of the book, maybe. Where I felt like it took up a little too much time, but I definitely still enjoyed it, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read A Study in Charlotte by, I didn't write down the author's surname, but yeah, I forgot her name. But this is a retake of the Sherlock Holmes stories, so where we follow this girl called Charlotte Holmes, who is a descendant of Sherlock Holmes. And we also follow a boy who is also a descendant of John Watson. So it is what it is. If you like Sherlock Holmes, and if you think that the sort of mystery is fun, I think you'll find some enjoyment in it. I gave it 3.75 out of 5 stars. I definitely thought it was fun to listen to it. And I'm probably also going to listen to the next 2 books in that series to complete it, because they're fun, quick reads, and it's Sherlock. It has that Sherlock vibe that I like, so that was really fun. The next book that I read was A Room with a View by E.M. Forster, and I gave that 2 stars. I was not super happy with that one. I'm not really good with classics in general, and the narration of this was terrible, and that definitely also made this book worse, because his accent was sort of a little too posh for me, and I noticed it too much. Like, that was something that annoyed me. I know that's probably how they talked back then, but there's just some things that stand too much out for me. And I didn't care for the story overall, so I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Changeless by Gail Carriger, the second book in the Parasol Protectorate series. I definitely enjoyed the first, and I also enjoyed this one. This one had quite a bit of a cliffhanger ending. If you don't know, the Parasol Protectorate follows this girl called Alexis, who is... she can remove people's powers if you touches them, if they have supernatural powers like vampires and werewolves and stuff. But she's very rare in this world, so there's not a lot of people who knows about them, and her own family doesn't know about it, and so they don't understand why she's acting a little different than everyone else. But it's definitely a really fun story, and you should check them out. They're very good, and the audios are pretty great as well. A pretty good narrator they've chosen for these books. And I gave the second book 4 stars. It had a really good ending, quite of a cliffhanger ending, and I'm pretty amazed that I haven't continued the series yet, but yeah. The next book that I read was Pendrick and the Shaman by Lois McMaster Bushell. This is book 2 in her sort of novella series that she has. That is a pre-series to her World of 5 Gods, I think that's the series title. And it follows Pendrick and Desdemona as they sort of get to know each other in this world. So they're really short stories, and I enjoyed them, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Fascination by John Scalzi. This is a sci-fi novel, and it's also sort of a legal thriller novel, because it follows this guy called Holloway, who is used to be a lawyer, and he discovers he's working at this planet where they're searching for different valuable stones. One day he discovers these fuzzies, they're like little creatures, and so he's stopping everything on the planet, because you're not allowed to continue your search for whatever that is until we find out if these are actual animals or not, because you're not supposed to invade other species properties or something of the like. Yeah, it's a little difficult to explain. I love this book. It was a really fun book. John Scalzi has a pretty humorous way of writing, and I enjoyed the legal part of this, and the fuzzies were really great, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I finished was The Novice by Taran Matharu, the first book in the Summoner series, sorry. And this follows this boy called Fletcher. And he pretty soon into this novel finds out he has this rare ability, so he's sent to the school to sort of learn about this magic and how to use it. And sort of that, I felt, please don't judge me on this, but I've had moments when I read this book where I felt sort of like I was reading the early Harry Potter novels or something. Sort of the way that he built friendships and how he was going to this magical school and all of that. That was pretty fun, and I'm definitely interested in the next book. I have the next book somewhere on my TBR. I own it, so I can get to it, and I'm definitely looking forward to reading it. The next book that I read was Strange Magic by Sid Moore, which is the first book in Witches Chronicles or something of the like. It's about this girl who, after her parents die, she's to take over this museum, and she finds there's some sort of weird things going on in the museum. And yeah, it was a pretty fun book, but not something I was overly impressed with, but I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was A Second Chance by Jodie Taylor, which was book 3 in the Chronicles of St. Mary series, and this is a sort of series where with time travel, and you travel back in time to make sure that history goes right, because some people are trying to go back and change history so that it will affect them in the way that they want. But you all know that if you change something in history, it could be catastrophic to what happens in present time. I love that. The humor in that is spectacular, and this particular book was okay. It was definitely, I feel like it was better than the second novel, which I had a little, thought were a little, not boring, but not as good as the first one. But this one I gave 4.25 stars, so close to a 4.5 stars for this one, but not quite there. The next book I read was As I Descended by Robin Talley. That follows these group of young kids who plays with a Ouija board, and then there's a sort of weird things happens. And it also retelling of Macbeth, the Shakespearean play Macbeth. I haven't read Macbeth, but I didn't really think that this book was really amazing. I felt like the reasons for the main character who wants to kill all of these people or remove them from, that her reasons for doing it is not good enough for me to actually following the story. So I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin, the third and final book in the Broken Earth trilogy. And this was definitely a really good ending to the book, to the series. If you don't know, this series follows set in a world where they have these different sort of seasons, and every time there's 5th season, it's like natural catastrophe thing, and sort of the majority of the people, they die, and then they have to figure out how to make a civilization again and stuff. And there are the people who can do magic, they're sort of, they can do magic with mind control and their power, psychological powers, but it's all to do with earth magic, so they can create earthquakes and sort of that. And they're more prone to do this if they are stressed, or if they are sad or angry or something. It spurs these things on. Book, it starts out by following 3 different point of views, and one of them is a second person narrative, and that annoyed me quite a bit in the beginning because I couldn't really figure it out. But as things went along, I really got used to that second person narrative, and I ended up really enjoying it. And I gave the third and final book in this series 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Anyas Ghost by Vera Brosgol. This is a graphic novel that follows this girl who falls into a giant hole, and down there she sees a skeleton and meets a ghost. And when she somehow comes up from that hole again, she's saved from that hole, the ghost sort of goes with her. So they sort of become friends, and things start happening, and yeah. I enjoyed it, but it was definitely not my favorite graphic novel I've read. I gave it 3.75 out of 5 stars. This is how the artwork looks like. So I sort of like the art style, but it's not something completely amazing like some other art styles I've seen, but it's very go-to like. The next book that I read was A Beautiful Ashes by Janine Frost. This is the first book in a new series that she wrote. I have enjoyed and listened to almost all of the Night Huntress books, the books that set in that world, and I've enjoyed them. I love the Night Huntress books. They were really amazing, and I also definitely have enjoyed the other books to some extent, but this one sort of felt flat for me. In comparison, I felt like the main character was annoying me a little too much, and it was a little too much some of the things that were the same as in the Night Hunters, instead of trying to create something new, a new storyline or something. So it felt like something I'd already read before, and I felt like that was a little annoying. I love the narration. The narration is always really good. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was the first book in my Stephen King project, and I read Carrie by Stephen King, which is the first book that he ever wrote, his debut novel. And this follows this girl called Carrie, who she's from a family that she has a mother that's really, really strong in her faith. Yeah, she has a mom that is really strong in her beliefs, and it was definitely not always easy to listen to this. It was really sad at times, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I already then could see what Stephen King can do with his characters. he's really amazing at writing characters that you believe in, and then, yeah. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I definitely enjoyed it a lot. The next book that I read was Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. I listened to the audio of this, and I said that I'm not really good with classics, and this is the same, but I'm also seriously not good at contemporaries. Like, contemporary romances is something that can bore me at times, and this is the same. I mean, it was like, you just saw the everyday life of this girl, and I understand how it can be pretty interesting to see, but I felt like it was a little annoying listening to her question everything that is going on in the world, and that just sort of annoyed me at the time, and I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Light Tree by Frances Hardinge. This is a standalone book, and it follows this girl who moves to a new place, and set in the 1800s or something. After a while, her father passes away, and she finds out there's this tree, this magical tree, that if you tell it a lie and actually make other people believe in that lie and come back and eat the fruit from the tree, you'll get a truth from them. I really had high hopes going into this. I'd heard really, really great things. Like, everyone I've seen review this has given this 5 stars or something of like, and to some extent I understand it, but this was way too slow paced for me. The pacing was off, and I was not completely into the story, but I enjoyed it enough, and I gave it 3 to 3.5 stars. The next book that I read was Pyramids by Terry Pratchett. This is book 7 in the Discworld series, and this sort of set by itself. It's not part of any of the other series where there's multiple books by these characters. And it definitely takes some interesting mythologies into the story this time, and I felt like it was fun to figure out how he put the history of the pyramids into the Discworld as well. And there was a lot of fun quotes again, and some interesting characters, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Cold Days by Jim Butcher, the 14th book in the Dresden Files series. I'm so close to being caught up now. I obviously listen to this in audio because I never read it any longer, because James Masters is my favorite narrator, and he narrates all of the Harry Dresden books. And this book, like the last book, the book 13, Ghost Story, was not very good. I was not super happy with that book. This one was definitely a lot better in that area. I felt like the story sort of went an interesting place again, and made up for some of the things that happened in Ghost Story, I feel like, and I gave it 4.25 to 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's still not up there with the best books in the series, but I hope that the next one will be really good. The next book that I read was Salems Lot by Stephen King. This is a vampire story. It's set in this small town called Salems Lot that's set in Maine, and this guy who's an author, he moves back into the small town that he used to live in, and they have sort of a weird history with an old mansion, and just as he's about to actually try and look into buying that house, someone else buys it before him, and things start to turn for the worse in that city slowly, and he finds out that there are vampires and they're sort of spreading, and it was a really good story, a really, really crazy ride, and definitely creepy on the vampire part, and I gave it a 4.75 out of 5 stars, so really close to a 5-star book for me. I rated it 5 stars on Goodreads because you can't do half stars. But I enjoyed this so much. It was a really good book. The next book that I finished was also by Stephen King, and that was The Shining. I just finished it yesterday, actually. And this is one of Stephen King's most known books. It's obviously been adapted into a movie, which I have not seen. So I actually knew very little about this book, except that it was about a haunted hotel. It's about this family with Jack as the father and Vinny and a boy called Danny. And after some things that his dad does something wrong, he's offered to be a caretaker of this hotel while over the winter period. And so he accepts that because he wants to do something and he feels like that's his only way out of things. And he has a drinking problem. But when they get to that hotel, Danny, the boy, finds this other person on the hotel. He says he has a shining, which is something that he can see things that everyone else can't. And Danny knows, and he finds out that Danny has the same thing. And so as things go along, Jack is sort of changes his personality a lot while they're there because of the things that goes on at the hotel. It's a pretty known story, so I'm not gonna go into more details about it, but I absolutely loved this book. It was really, really good. A crazy ride. I felt like if I had listened to this like in one go, I would have been a lot more scared. But I sort of listened to this in chunks by the end. So I felt like the last part, even though it was scary, I wasn't as scared as I probably should have been with the things that happened. Because there was definitely a part of me when I was listening to like 3 hours straight, I was really being anxious about everything that was going on in the story. But I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars. It was really amazing, and I definitely understand the hype about this book. It was worth everything. Definitely enjoyed it, and I gave it obviously 5 out of 5 stars. Last and final book that I've currently read. I don't think I'll finish anything else, but if I do, I'll have it in my January wrap up. And I'll let you know. But I only have tomorrow and today to read, so yeah, and it's probably not gonna happen. But the final book that I finished is Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the original screenplay by J.K. Rowling. This is obviously just the screenplay of the movie Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. There's not a lot of difference. If you watch the movie, then you know the story. I don't know, I prefer watching the movie version than reading a play, but it is a really beautiful book, so I'm happy I have it. But I don't know if she publishes more of these books in the future, like these plays. I'm not sure I'm gonna buy them, unless they are actually plays that's not being made into movies. I'd much rather she wrote actual books. Like the Harry Potter books, but with Newt Scamander and that part of it. But I know she's probably not gonna do that. But it was a good story. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. I prefer the movie version. Those were all of the books that I've read since August, or mid-August, and that I haven't wrapped up yet. I know that this was a pretty brief reviews, but I hope you still felt like now you know which books I've been reading recently and which books I've enjoyed, which books I've probably not enjoyed as much. And yeah, definitely let me know in comments down below if you've read any of the books that I've talked about today and what your thoughts were about them. And also like to wish you all a happy new year, because I don't think another video will be up until after 2018 has come around. And hopefully you'll all have a wonderful evening. I am personally I'm not gonna go with the big party thing this year because I didn't really feel like it. I felt like last year when the next day after New Year's, I was like, last time I'm gonna do that. You know, the whole where you drink yourself into oblivion or something. And yeah, I feel like I'm too old for that now. I'd much rather just focus on making really excellent food and maybe have a couple of drinks, have good wine to the food, whatever, and then just enjoy watching a little bit of TV, doing some board games, whatever, just having a fun time in that way. So I'm gonna go to my parents' house, which is probably, yeah, I haven't done that since, I think for the past 10 years I haven't been at their house for New Year's, except there were some years where I was there for dinner and then I went to my friend's house afterwards. But yeah, and I've had several people asking me what I'm gonna do for New Year's and if I want to go with them, but I just decided that I didn't want to this year. I always end up being pretty disappointed with the party, and yeah, people are always more focused on drinking a lot of shots and cocktails and whatever than they are about also making really excellent food. So that's why I wanted to do this year. But yeah, Happy New Year. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video very, very soon. Goodbye.